Hello and welcome to today's Live and Kicking in Canada, Why In-Game Betting and Hockey Will Be Key Battlegrounds webinar. For this webinar, attendees will be in listen-only mode. If you need technical assistance, please submit your request under the Tech tab in the window in the top right-hand corner of your computer screen. If you wish to submit a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A window in the top right-hand corner of your computer screen. We will try to answer all questions during the webinar, but if an in-depth answer is needed or we run out of time, we will try to answer your question at a later time via email. The presentation will now begin.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our fourth edition of the Canadian Gaming Summit webinar series. We've had a series of webinars over the last few weeks leading up to the Canadian Gaming Summit, which is taking place June 9 and 10. Registration is free, so please sign up. At CanadianGamingSummit.com is the website. Go and please register. There's lots more interesting sessions over the 2 days. But today, we've got something very great for you. Hockey playoffs are on us. We're now starting. Great action to be seen. But what are we going to talk about today as well? Why in-game betting and hockey are the key battlegrounds for sports betting in Canada. And we have no one better to do it than our folks at Kambi. So I'm going to introduce you to Sarah Robertson, Vice President of Sales at Kambi, and her colleague Kevin Cunningham, who is a competitive intelligence analyst with Kambi, and they're going to walk you through some of the things on why in-game betting and hockey is important in the Canadian market, which we hope to have something really soon. And so, Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you both for being here today, and I'll let the experts have at it, and I'll sit back and watch. So thanks again for both of you for being here. Look forward to a very exciting session. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the nice introduction. As Paul mentioned, we're very excited for the Canadian Gaming Summit in the coming weeks, and we are here to talk to you a little bit today around in-play betting and our hockey product, and how that's going to be a very exciting opportunity for operators that will be working in the Canadian space as well as Canadian consumers. So just as we get going, Kevin and I are going to go through some really kind of key findings based on some data that we've put together to give you guys some insight into what do we expect in the marketplace and around the different demographics of consumers that you can expect across sports wagering products. And we'll kick off with just a little bit of background about Kambi. For those of you who aren't familiar, Kambi is a leading B2B, business-to-business supplier of sports wagering solutions. So it's an end-to-end solution. We work across the globe, but over the last 3 years since the repeal of PASPA in the US, we really have a very strong focus in North America. What we provide to operators across our network is a full turnkey solution for sports betting. So that encompasses the full technical platform, which is the back-end engine that allows operators to create a sports wagering offering. We do all of the risk management, so we are able to segment the customers and manage the liability and risk appropriately for different operators. We do all of the odds and trading. We do all of the technical and operational compliance to make sure that within your regulations you have an offering that is compliant. We know that's going to be very important for Canadian consumers to make sure that they have a safe and regulated product. And we package that all up into user interfaces. So we have a mobile-facing product, a online-facing product, and actually a land-based product, which is available in casinos throughout the globe. So some of the operators that we work with, you'll be familiar with probably across the border. We work with Penn National Gaming, and we supply the Barstool Sportsbook. We work with DraftKings. We work with Rush Street, Churchill Downs, Unibet. We work with some tribal operators as well, Seneca Gaming, Four Winds, and even outside of the US, we have partners across the globe, specifically in Europe and Australia, and really all over. We are a Swedish company by heritage, and we have our main kind of technical infrastructure in Sweden, but we have operations across the globe, as you can see on our slide here. And we're really excited today to talk to you a little bit about Kambi, but mostly really about what we expect to see in the Canadian market, specifically Ontario, as single event wagering regulates. So we're really excited to kick off. So I'll hand over to Kevin for the next slide and we'll get started.
Yeah, so with that glance into Kambi, can kind of give you guys a bit more of a specific look at the US here. So in the last 3 years, it's been pretty busy times for us. We've launched in 14 states with 51 retail properties. And actually, in those 14 states, we were first to market in 10 of those. So whether it be placing the actual first bet or just being there on the first day, speed to market is definitely something that's very big to us. And that's translated into a lot of success over here. So um, in those 14 states, we're taking about 40% market share. So, we're sharing that success with our partners. We've really gotten off to a good start, but I think Sarah can touch upon here just how important speed to market is as a function and kind of as a key pillar for us.
Yeah, and I think it's important to contextualize why we would show you this information and why, for as a Canadian operator or a Canadian consumer, that will be important. Well, achieving speed to market is incredibly important when you're looking to enter a newly regulating or re-regulating market, such as Ontario. Being able to achieve speed to market or being first to market allows you to capitalize on the media and press around a market launch. We know people in Canada have been waiting a really long time for single event wagering. It's going to be really exciting. So I think having a sportsbook offering that is market ready is going to be critically important. But outside of the kind of the media and the marketing around it, it's really around carving out a place with the consumer. You're going to have lower acquisition costs if you launch quickly. You're going to be able to reduce churn of VIP customers because you're going to be able to create stickiness with your product. And I think it's just incredibly important. And we've seen really that very much materialize in the US. A lot of our partners who have achieved that first to market piece have really been able to capture market share and maintain that market share. So again, very important. And I think something that we always want to iterate is it's not just about launching first, but it's about making sure you have a compliant product within the marketplace. So that's something that Kambi always likes to understand and work very closely with our operator partners, is making sure that we are ready to go for launch with a product that's going to be relevant and compliant to the consumers, to the Canadian consumers in this. So I think
Yeah.
what we wanted to talk a little bit about for the next slide, and Kevin, I'll talk one piece and then I'll hand over to you. We wanted to talk a little bit about just the evolution of where we see the volume shifting from pre-match to live or in-play betting. And what we mean when we mean live or in-play betting is wagers that are available during the match. And we actually even break that down even further to what we call instant betting, which is really fast markets where consumers are able to place a bet and have that bet settled in 60 to 90 seconds. So it's, the next goal, it's the next goal scorer. It's really, really interesting fast markets that people can engage with all throughout the match. So I think what we've seen across the evolution of how we see volume coming in, if you look throughout the globe in some of the markets that are more mature, is that you've seen, an evolution whereby, a lot of the volume was previously coming through pre-match markets. And now, as you can see on the graph on the right, is that we're seeing the gradual increase across live betting. And again, this is really what's going to be enabled when single event wagering is enabled in Canada. So your consumers are going to have just so much more opportunity on different bet types available to them. So I think that's really important, and is understanding how that looks. And it's not going to be kind of an immediate switch over, but you'll see that, parlay betting and combination betting in conjunction with single event wagering and in play becomes a very compelling overall view for the customer to make lots of different types of bets. So I think that's really interesting to look at and to understand that it's not about cannibalization of one bet type to the other. It's about how they exist in an ecosystem.
Exactly to Sarah's point there. I think we're going to see, maybe a bit faster than the 2008 to 2019 example we have here, but it will be a kind of a gradual shift over to the single event side. So, in our network that, we have across the globe right now. Parlay and combination betting is still a huge portion of what we're doing. So, you can see pre-match, we're almost 30% for combinations and parlays, and then that still holds true on live. So it really is not going to take away from the current Canadian product. It's really more about enhancing it and kind of really widening the breadth of it that we have today. So with that, we kind of wanted to show some of the examples that we're seeing of this in a single event market such as the US. So a few sports or a few states actually report on a sport by sport basis, and they put those numbers out publicly, and those 4 are listed here. So New Jersey is really
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our 4th edition of the Canadian Gaming Summit webinar series. We've had a series of webinars over the last few weeks in leading up to the Canadian Gaming Summit, which is taking place June 9 and 10. Registration is free, so please sign up. But CanadianGamingSummit.com is the website. Go and please register. There's lots more interesting sessions over the 2 days. But today, we've got something very great for you. Hockey playoffs are on us. We're now starting. Great action to be seen. But what are we going to talk about today as well? Why in-game betting and hockey are the key battleground turnover.
Looking media from wagering,
because a lot of the revenue that
some of the fears that we hear sometimes around the margin of a single event wager versus the margin of a parlay wager. So we'll talk through that in more detail. But I think a common misconception, but we have a lot of data to back up that it's really not about that at all. So I think in addition to talking around just a single event wagering, we really wanted to talk around the NHL product, and obviously it being the playoffs right now, we thought this was a really relevant time to talk through our hockey product. What's interesting about Kambi is that, we didn't actually have to build up our hockey product when we started looking at Canada and understanding that Canada would regulate single event wagering, because we are a Scandinavian company. So we have that heritage in that we have had an industry leading hockey product for quite some time. We actually have a team of expert in-house traders that are dedicated to trading hockey. So that's really allowed us to build up a wide variety of markets that are available via Kambi that our competitors don't have. So those are the live products, those really snackable bet types that allows the consumer to engage throughout the hockey match to make and place bets. And even with that, we have some instant markets available, which is quite interesting in hockey. We also have a really big or expansive array of player specials or player props. So those are player specific bets, which prove to be very, very important and engaging to customers across the US and across the globe. So we'll talk a little bit about that and why those types of markets tend to add a lot of value, because they really create stickiness with your consumers. They're going to keep coming back and making these types of bets because they're really, really engaging. And that's really what you're going to need to be able to compete with the previously operating offshore books, but B, to be able to keep your customers engaged in what is going to be a very competitive open market in Ontario anyway. So I think that's a very kind of important piece for operators to understand, is that you need to have a strong offering, and it's not just around having more markets available, it's about having engaging markets available. And I think Kambi does that really well through our technology, but also through our heritage of these expert traders that we have working. We have a team of about almost 400 traders that sit across the globe. We do all of the pricing in-house, so it's a very robust team that's working to be able to provide a market-leading product.
Yeah, Sarah really hit on pretty much most of the points there. But with our hockey offering, one of the things that we really wanted to highlight was that it's not just about, having an expansive offering. It needs to be really engaging, really specific, something that, sells the Canadian consumer that this is something that they should and want to engage with, that it's going to offer them more than the offshore books are offering, that they can expand upon their parlaying experience and bring that over to the single event space. So Kambi's product is, again, it's been around for a while. We have a pretty strong base there, but some of the specifics of that offering we'll dive into here. So the live offering is one that we're pretty proud of within Kambi. It gets really specific and really fast, as Sarah said, with some of the instant markets. We can go as quick as the next goal scorer. We're currently running that for our playoff offering. And that's where you kind of see the overlap between the live offering and then as well as the player prop offering. But yeah, big picture here, 150 plus markets pre-match, 70 plus live. And as I said, the player specials are really something that we do quite a lot of extensive work around. So that can be anything from first or last goal scorer, total number of shots, anytime goal scorer, and we're really expanding that out within our product development to, really give the end bettor as much chance to engage with specific players, specific teams, to make it really as narrow and specific as they want it to be. So yeah, it's a really compelling product that we think we have built out here, but it's one that we're continually trying to grow with.
I think it's just to add to what Kevin was saying, we can talk around that we have a market leading product, but it's really important for, as a potential operator in the space to understand what goes in behind to making that product available to consumers. Live markets and live betting is very difficult to do. You need fast speeds, you need strong technology, you need really slick US so that the consumer can place their bet fast, and you need really an expert trading organization to be able to do this very quickly. So that's where Kambi has really built out over years and years of experience, and that's where we feel is going to really determine those operators in the Canadian space that are going to be cutting edge, because this is not easy to do. It's not easy to replicate, and it will be very compelling for the consumer. Consumers will be very excited about this, especially with all of the media around single event wagering. It's going to be important to make sure it's compelling. So I think the next piece that we wanted to talk around was our bet builder or parlay builder product, and then the next kind of iteration of that, which is the live or in-play bet builder product. So, what we've done with bet builder is we've built our in-house technology to be able to give consumers maximum amount of choice when they are building a parlay bet. So it gives them freedom to parlay all of the different outcomes across the same match, growing the potential of these outcomes exponentially. So it's not just around main lines. We want to make sure that, all the lines are combinable. And what we've even done is taking that one step further to be able to do that in the live product. So again, this is where consumer choice becomes really, really important. Consumers don't want to go in and just do the two main lines. They don't want to be boxed into their choices when they're building parlay bets. So this is really, you come into the mobile product or to the retail product and you have endless amount of choice when making a combination of parlay bets.
Another level of that is our parlay pre-packs, and I'd say this is probably the more simplified version of the bet builder and live bet builder. So these are all priced up pre-match by our trading team. So they individually price up all these bet offers, and so they go in before the game, and bettor can see in this pre-pack section all the pre-packaged parlays that we've put out there. So a bettor can select one of those, and it's obviously something that's quite familiar in Canada. But where it gets really educational, I'd say, is when you go into the actual bet slip, you can go in and edit the parlay pre-packs. And this is where you kind of start to see the evolution from it just being about parlay betting in Canada to the single event wagering space. So a bettor can see something that they're familiar with in terms of a parlay, and then they can kind of deduct that back to a single wager if they would like to. So really allows for a lot of flexibility, but also gets them to see kind of the balance between what a single wager looks like versus what it looks like combined with a few other bet
And
offers out there. So
I would definitely add to, prepackaged parlays are a great way, a great piece of the offering to use as an acquisition funnel. You can send those out through your media channels to say these are offers that we have available, and those are a great way for, maybe a consumer that hasn't done a lot of betting before, or isn't familiar with your sports book, to feel very comfortable with making that selection. So I think that's another interesting point around that piece.
yeah, so moving ahead here, so we've talked a lot about the actual offering that we have, but kind of want to translate that into what it looks like from a data standpoint. And, at the end of the day, the dollar signs that we see coming through our sports book. So a lot of the in-play offerings is, again, very new to the market and new to Kambi, but we're seeing a lot of success with it. So, high single digits, low double digits amount of turnover is coming from our in-play products with the big four sports over here in the US. And then on the player prop side, we're seeing high teens, getting even close to 20% of our turnover coming from some of these player prop bets. So it really shows that this isn't just a really niche offering. You're not, tailoring the offering to only a few bettors. It's actually quite robust and really reaching a lot of different players, and is a very important part, I'd say, at this point of our Kambi offering. So, it's nice to know that you have the offering, but it is turning up at the end of the day as a big part of the business that we do.
Yeah, I think just to kind of drive that point home, Kevin, I mean, these percentages may not look very comprehensive on the screen, but this is correlating to a huge amount of revenue for operators. So, this is incremental revenue that will determine, how well or not you do in the marketplace. And this is really, like I said, around also having a offering that is going to be engaging for those high value or VIP type customers that need to have that very strong offering to be able to reduce churn. So it's really around that piece. So this is really where we see the incremental gains that our operators achieve, is through the markets like these.
And even further to that point, what you see here in terms of the turnover, it's not even telling the full story. So with these instant offerings, you're keeping players engaged, but that could also mean they're betting on other things throughout the game. So it's just another way of, making the actual full event engaging through the entire, when you talk about hockey, the 3 periods of it could be a blowout game, but your bettor could still be very well involved in the game just based on a player prop, based on the instant markets. It really expands the whole experience for them.
Yeah, it's creating snackable bet options throughout the match, like Kevin said. So you're continuously able to find bet offers that are exciting. So you're not, it's, a change in behavior from, years ago where you made your bet pre-match and sat back and watched the game. This is multiple bet opportunities, and it's a really exciting, a very exciting product for consumers.
And yeah, another way that this is kind of shown up in our data here in the US. So this past season, we actually had 2 Canadian teams make the top 10 turnover for the NHL. So it shows that, even in the US market, we already have a bit of an appetite for this type of betting. 16.5% of all our money line turnover came from Canadian teams. So with the inclusion of Canada in the coming years, I think we'll see that number jump up quite a lot, and the pecking order of the teams here, I'm sure, will change quite a bit as well. So just kind of a fun way of looking at things, that this is something that we're already seeing within our system, and it's really only going to expand and kind of fluctuate as new markets open up.
Yeah, given the popularity of NHL in Canada, I would expect, by next year, once we've launched in Canada, if we look at this graph, we'll see some very different results for Canadian teams being much higher up the list. I think it speaks volumes that even without a localized Canadian offering and not being in Canada, we're seeing that much volume come through from Canadian teams. So those are, that's not around local support. That's just around people really supporting Canadian teams and the hockey product itself.
And
So I
with
think
that,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, you go ahead, Kevin.
okay, thank you. Yeah, so with the NHL specifically and the Canadian opportunity, we're really excited for it for this one reason that the NHL really caters to a quite similar profile of what sports bettors are demographically. As you can see here, the NHL, one of the youngest skewing fan bases out there, 49 years old is the median age. Um, so it really profiles quite similarly to the average sports bettor that we have pinpointed over here on the right side. So yeah, it's quite an exciting time that we think Canada is going to come out of the gates really strong just because the consumers there and their interests are also very well aligned to that of the average sports bettor. So that's what makes this market really exciting from our view, that it's not just a whole new population to pull from, but it's a population we expect to be really well ingrained within the sports betting community.
Yeah, no, I would just add to that. I think we'll see a lot of unique partnership opportunities in the Canadian market, and a lot of operators that'll capitalize on this, this alignment of NHL viewership and NHL fans with their propensity to bet. And I think there's a lot that operators can do to localize their product and create really unique marketing campaigns to capture that. So I think on this slide, we wanted to talk a little bit around the cross-sell capability between sports and iCasino. I think we would be remiss to not discuss iCasino in this presentation, given that Ontario is regulating both sports wagering and iCasino. I think what we've seen across states where both are enabled is that sports acts as a great acquisition funnel for iCasino. Sports consumers are cheaper to acquire, and they really cross over quite well to iCasino. You can be placing wagers throughout a match or event that you're watching, and really easily transition over to an iCasino product from there. We've seen fantastic cross-sell and growth of iCasino in the US, and really it's around making sure that you have a technology provider that can facilitate that cross-sell. So Kambi, and I'm sure other operators, have done a lot of work to facilitate real-time data coming out of the sports book. So you can say, this consumer has lost 3 bets in a row, let's give them a free spin on the casino product, or let's invite them to visit the property if it's a land-based operator. So there's a lot you can do, and I think really we've seen sports wagering act as kind of a springboard to iCasino in a lot of ways. So we see a lot of really fantastic operators capitalizing on that in states where iCasino is enabled. So Pennsylvania is the example that we've given here with some data points. So I think that's an interesting point to talk through, and for the Canadian operators to consider when looking at technology providers and looking at their strategy.
Yeah, rounding things up here before we get to our Q&A, we really see kind of 3 big takeaways from this whole session that we wanted to drive home. So, Canadians are going to expect a robust offering. Just because single event wagering is coming to the market doesn't mean that the customers are immediately going to jump on the ship there. It's really about making sure that they have an offering that's compelling to them, one that they really want to engage with. And that leads to our second point, which is that offering, the better it is, the stronger it is, the more expansive it is going to drive more turnover and revenue for the operators. So, the larger a sports betting product that you can have, the more depth it has, the better the end results will be. At the end of the day, the better the product, the more money you will probably see coming in. So this is where we talk about the product development side, the combinability, the depth of offering, these are all things that we're working on, just really making it that immersive experience so that at the end of the day, we're trying to make the books as effective as possible for our partners. And then lastly, I'd say most excitingly from this point is just how exciting hockey is as an opportunity. So, the fan base is young. It's really aligned to the sports bettor. We expect it to be a really big funnel to sports betting. And then in turn, it'll really expand a lot of operators' other verticals as well. So it all kind of ties together in its own way. And it's going to be really interesting process to see it all unfold. But hockey, we really think will be a key driver for the Canadian market.
Yeah, I would say it's been kind of a pleasure to go through these different data points with you guys. I hope that the listeners and audience have been able to take some information that is interesting. And that's always really the approach Kambi likes to take, is a consultative and thought leadership approach. And that's really what drives how we do business. We're really always thinking of the consumer in mind. So thanks everyone for your time today, and we look forward to engaging at the summit.
Yeah, now I think we'll open it up to the Q&A. So we'll take a look at some of the questions here and start going through those.
Okay, great. Kevin, can you hear me okay? Mute. I can start with the first question. Well, Kevin unmutes. The first question that we have is coming through, and it reads, will Kambi's experience in the US assist in Canada from a regulatory perspective? I think yes. I think we didn't really touch a huge amount on our regs team and the reg component of our business, but we take a very proactive approach to sportsbook control and regulation, and we work very closely with regulators. We are already engaging with Canadian regulators, and speed to market is, as we spoke about, critically important. So we are proactively preparing for the market, and we'll be ready to go. So I think, yes, our experience in the US will help us. Really, it's about the scalability of our technology and the proactiveness of our reg team and piece to our organization that works.
Yeah, I think that thoroughly covers it. Next one up here, why are instant markets so important in terms of user engagement? Yeah, this is a really good one. I think one that we're pretty hopeful and gung-ho about. Instant markets are, just very important, I guess, when you consider something that a lot of industries are considering right now. So we're seeing a shorter attention span from users. This is not specific to sports betting. It's a media issue. It goes across pretty much every industry out there, that people want that instant gratification type of feel. So this obviously ties quite well into that, but when you start looking at sports betting, I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, that the game could be out of reach, not so interesting, but a fan might be physically at the venue and want to engage still, or they might just be watching on TV and still want to have some sort of involvement with the game. This just kind of makes it easier, a little bit faster, without committing to that, again, 2-3 hour long match. It's something that's, again, a lot of media companies are considering. How do you better interact with consumers and do it in a shorter time span? And we think this really fits well into that mold. So that's why we're pretty excited about it and think it's going to be a pretty big driver going forward.
I think there's another one here I can take. What are some of the ways that Canadian operators can tailor and differentiate their sports books, particularly from an in-play perspective? I think obviously being able to communicate your brand strategy to your consumers is really important. And given that Ontario is going to be a very crowded marketplace, we think that operators really need to be able to differentiate really effectively, especially local operators that are wanting to connect with their consumers with their notable brands that they have in the space. So the Kambi technology is really built around that. We allow our operator partners to really customize and build out the front end. And some operators take that to to an extreme where they build out a totally native front end. Some operators pick and choose kind of different parts of the front end to control and inject casino content into. So there's a wide array of how you can differentiate in terms of the front end. But in addition to that, we offer our operator partners the ability to differentiate on price. So we have a price differentiation tool to allow our operators to adjust price and be more they would in others, and specifically and online. So we give operators a lot of autonomy in how they do that and how they present their sports book to their consumers. So we spend a lot of time in how we develop our product around that very core component is allowing Kambi sports books to look and behave the same way. We understand that different businesses have different strategies and we need to have a technology that support those different strategies.
Next one up here. How well founded do you think the comparisons are between the US and Canadian sports betting markets? I think this one's really interesting. Just myself being US based, I'm a little biased here. I think this is a fun one to watch. I think one of the big changes that you'll see between the two markets is driven a lot by media. So Canadian consumers, I'd say, have had a bit more access, just given they've seen it for a few years now through sports media. So I would actually say they're probably a bit more informed, probably a little more eager to have it up there than, say, the initial US states were. So I think that's where you can see some comparisons where Canada might actually move a little bit quicker at the start of things. But in terms of the players in the market and how it might look compared to the US, I think media will still be a big part of it. I think you'll still see the same, some of the same major casino operators playing a role. But at the end of the day, the consumers are a little bit different. Some of the players are obviously different. So I think I wouldn't say it's apples to oranges, but it's certainly not a like for like comparison. It's probably somewhere in the middle there between on that spectrum. So definitely going to have some similarities, but I think there still will be some key distinctions, and a lot of that's going to be figured out hopefully in the coming years.
Yeah, I would say, although we are a very prevalent operator in the US or provider, or sorry, supplier in the US, we are a global supplier. So we really look to ensure that our offering is really compelling in all of the markets that we're working in. So I think that's actually one of the nice USPs when, an operator works with Kambi is that you are able to plug into a leading global supplier that is, supplying sports solutions for tier one operators across the globe. And, we are continuously building out our offering to make it market ready for the markets that we work in. So it's not around just replicating what we do in the US and Canada. It will be around working to co-create with our partners to make sure that we have a really strong localized offering. So I think that's definitely something that's a nice USP to Kambi is that you have that global view and you get a really nice long tail offering. When there's a lull in major league sports, depending on timing, you have a really nice long tail offering across other sports as well. So that's definitely something that we look at when we're looking at Canadian to US consumers, is making sure that all consumers have a huge amount of choice. think, do we have any other questions?
That's all I'm seeing come through at the moment, Sarah. Yeah,
I
do,
think
do you have any?
there was a question just around time frame for Kambi to launch operators. I know we spoke a lot around speed to market and what Kambi can achieve in assisting operators. And really, um, we can typically match the speed at which we need to go in terms of moving quite quickly to help facilitate, those very fast regulating markets. And when we want to make sure that we're launching on day one for our operators. So a typical kind of integration for us can go very, very quickly in a matter of weeks. And I think that's, again, a really strong USP to Kambi is the scalability of our technology, but also the scalability and the speed at which we can integrate. As I mentioned at the top of the discussion, we are a sportsbook only technology, so that allows us to be really, really agile in setting up what we do. And we work with different ecosystem partners to provide some iGaming. So I would say that that's, again, a very big piece around making sure that you choose a strong partner, is making sure that that they can support you in terms of your launch timings. We've seen kind of the failings of that in a lot of US states. So I think that's something for all of the listeners who are operators here to be mindful of as they look to select a partner.
Another question. So what are some of the other common sports that you guys see being a big player in Canada? So this one, I think basketball is going to be a huge driver. Just especially, we talked a lot about the instant markets. Um, with that, I think basketball is going to grow into a really great instant sport. Just next shot, next play. Those are things that we're working on, obviously, and I think that actually the sport itself is tailored quite well for that type of offering. But in Canada, basketball is growing a lot as a sport, so we actually do expect to see a good amount of our business coming from basketball. It's not
Oh, do we lose Kevin? Oh, if we're having some technical difficulties, I can take over, but it looks like Kevin maybe might have dropped from the call. But yeah, I think we obviously understand that basketball will be incredibly important. Kevin, are you back?
Yeah, back. Sorry. Um,
I had just taken over when you were gone. I'll let you finish your thought though.
yeah, so hopefully I'm not repeating anything. But yeah, basketball is going to be huge with it. It's also not just the NBA as well. College basketball does surprisingly have a pretty good following in Canada. So, it's not just the U.S. Not just the U.S. driving from those college sports, but Canada will get some of that as well. So that could be a big player there. I mean, even college football and the NFL obviously are going to be huge drivers in Canada as well. It's not, it's really not all that different from the U.S. market, but just more a re-emphasis by which sports matter to them. Where the US, obviously, NFL is king, and then it's kind of everything else that follows. But for Canada, I think it'll actually be kind of more evenly dispersed, with hockey being at the top and then kind of everything else just flat across the way there. So where we see, the majority of our turnover coming from could look a lot different just in terms of, how it ranks out. But by and large, the same sports that matter here in the US are still going to matter in Canada. So again, it'll definitely look different, and I'm curious myself to see how those numbers will look and how they'll vary. But definitely an exciting one to follow ahead. And I think part of that too will be quite reliant on when the launch is. So, what season we see some of the provinces open up, that could very well, drive, which sport ranks first. And then, as months go on and more areas open up, that could change quite a bit. So it's not something you can look at in the first month of numbers and say, okay, definitively, this sport is running away within Canada. I think it's going to be something that we see change and have to watch for a good duration of time.
I mean, ultimately, everything we do is data driven. We talked around the our expansive kind of in-play markets and our expansive instant markets. We are typically rolling out new bet offers and new markets across multiple sports at a very high level in terms of the leagues, and then based on the success and how we see the engagement across those bet offers is really how we further develop the product. So it's all data led with the consumer in mind, and we will definitely be using Kambi network data, which is a huge volume of data across the US and the globe, to make sure that we are further developing a product that's going to be relevant for Canadians. And as we work within Canada, we will we'll be able to do that with Canadian driven data as well. I'm just looking to see if there's more questions here. Are close to being finalized. I guess I think a few kind of closing words, as I think we're just questions that I can see in the chat box, but just a few closing words. If you'd like to get in touch with the Kambi team from here, we obviously will share our details across. If there are specific questions you'd like to understand around Kambi technology, around how we support our partners, around what integration looks like, how we are, in more in depth, how we are preparing for the Ontario market launch and looking at Canada as a whole, we'd really be happy to do that. You can reach out to myself or Kevin, and we can speak with you individually. So just wanted to say thanks so much for your time, for everyone who listened and for everyone who submitted questions. And we look forward to speaking with more of you at the summit.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.